Good morning, everybody. It's the 15th of July, 2026, and if you just clicked in, good, because you picked the right morning. In the next few minutes, I'm walking you through 90 minutes that just changed the entire picture in the Gulf. 90 minutes, that's it. That's all it took. Stick around, because this one's got layers, and by the end, you're gonna understand exactly why. Right now, on your screen, you're looking at footage CENTCOM released this morning. Watch it. Munitions coming off the rail. Impact. Secondary explosion. That's a cruise missile depot going up on Greater Tunb Island, right at the mouth of the Strait of Hormuz. And this isn't a one-off strike. This is night 5. 5 nights in a row. 5 nights of continuous strikes on Iranian positions, and every single night the pattern looks the same. Boom, right there. Every single time. You see the flash, you see the frame shake, you see the follow-up strike hit the exact same coordinates 30 seconds later. Because that's not luck, that's targeting data. 5 nights, same island, same launch site, same result. Now why does this one rock matter so much? Because Greater Tunb sits almost on top of the shipping lane every oil tanker on the planet has to pass through. Whoever controls that stretch of water controls the price of gas at your local station, whether you realize it or not. So when I say 5 nights, I don't mean 5 random strikes. I mean 5 nights of a deliberate campaign to shut down Iran's ability to threaten that strait. That's the picture on your screen right now. But of course, Tehran has its own version of events, and yeah, it's a little different. So here's what Iran is saying. Their state media claims they hit and destroyed American aircraft, an F-15, an F-16, and I kid you not, an F-35 at Al-Assad in Iraq, in Jordan, and in Bahrain. 3 different countries, 3 different stealth and non-stealth platforms, allegedly all taken out at the same time. That's the claim. Now here's CENTCOM's response, word for word, in 2 numbers. 0 aircraft lost, 0 operational pauses. That's it. That's the entire rebuttal. Iran says, we shot down your jets. CENTCOM says 0. Iran says, we hit 3 bases in 3 countries. CENTCOM says 0. And by the way, operations never even paused. I mean, look, if you're going to claim a kill, at least give me a piece of wreckage. Give me a tail number. Give me anything. Because right now what we've got is one side with battle damage assessment photos of a smoking depot on Greater Tunb, and the other side with a press release and 0 physical evidence. And this isn't new, by the way. This is the same playbook Iran runs after almost every exchange. Claim a massive victory within hours before anyone can verify anything. Because by the time the fact check comes out, the headline's already gone viral. It's a pattern, and honestly, at this point, I'd be more surprised if they didn't claim an F-35 kill. So no, I'm not going to sit here and pretend both claims carry equal weight. One side is showing footage, the other side is showing adjectives, and that difference matters more than people think. Okay, quick palate cleanser, because we all need one. Iran's claiming they downed a stealth fighter with apparently 0 debris, 0 wreckage, 0 radar track, nothing. At this point, the F-35 isn't stealth. It's basically a ghost. You can't catch what was never there. It's like claiming you tackled a guy in a football game that the referee, both broadcast cameras, and the entire stadium somehow missed. Everyone missed it, except the guy telling the story. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying if you're going to sell me on an invisible kill, I need at least 1 photo of the smoke. Because trust me, folks, the invisible kill highlight reel would honestly be worth billions on its own. But we don't run on vibes here. We run on wreckage, radar tracks, and paperwork. All right, here's where we're headed. In a few minutes, I'm going to rewind the entire timeline, hour by hour, starting back on July 7th, so you understand exactly how we got from a single attack on a cargo ship to a 90-minute strike package. That's coming up around the middle of the video. Right after that, I'm breaking down the actual hardware doing the work, the F-15E, the F-16 Wild Weasels, the Growlers, that's the technical section, around 2/3 of the way through. Then I'll give you the honest assessment of what Iran still has left, and we'll close with the bigger strategic picture. And stick around to the very end, because there's a second story brewing tonight. Over 100 Russian ships hit in the Sea of Azov, and that one deserves its own conversation. But first, before any of that, I need to talk about the people behind these numbers. Before we go any further, I need to slow down. 7 commercial ships were attacked in 7 days. Nearly 12 sailors are dead, wounded, or missing. 12 people, not a statistic. 12 people who woke up, went to work on a ship, and didn't know that day would be the day everything changed. We don't have full names yet. We don't have ages or hometowns or the details that let us properly honor each one. And that matters to me because a number on a screen isn't a person. When the names come out, and they will come out, I want you to remember them, not just the ships they were on. Somewhere right now, there are families waiting for a phone call they don't want to get. There are commanders writing letters they never wanted to write. So before we talk hardware, before we talk strategy, before any of the analysis, take a second to the sailors still out there right now, holding that line in the Strait of Hormuz, keeping the lanes open so the rest of us can go about our day without thinking twice about it. Thank you. Genuinely, thank you. Now, let's go back and see exactly how we got here. So let's rewind, because the picture on your screen this morning didn't come out of nowhere. It's the end point of 8 straight days of escalation. And if you trace it hour by hour, the logic of the campaign actually makes a lot more sense. Go back to July 7th. According to CENTCOM's initial statement, IRGC fast attack elements opened fire on a commercial vessel transiting near the strait without warning in what analysts describe as a deliberate test of how far Iran could push before Washington responded. Within hours, according to reporting from multiple defense outlets, the U.S. Air Force scrambled F-15E Strike Eagles and F-16 CJ Wild Weasels out of bases in the region, backed by loitering munitions, essentially small kamikaze drones designed to loiter over a target area and strike the moment something worth hitting shows up. Confirmed targets that first night included radar installations, UAV assets, cruise missiles, ballistic missile components, and several IRGC fast boats operating along the coast. That was night one. From there, according to CENTCOM's daily briefings, the campaign didn't stop. It escalated night after night as American forces expanded the target list from mobile assets to fixed infrastructure. Around the same period, CENTCOM confirmed a significant reinforcement of naval assets in and around the Strait of Hormuz, bringing the total presence to roughly 20 destroyers alongside 2 full carrier strike groups. According to fleet tracking data cited by regional analysts, that's not a routine presence, that's a blockade posture, positioned specifically to choke off Iran's ability to threaten shipping lanes while the air campaign did its work overhead. Meanwhile, intelligence assessments began to zero in on one location in particular, Greater Tumb Island, sitting almost directly in the mouth of the strait, which CENTCOM identified as a forward operating position for IRGC forces, housing a cruise missile depot, mobile launch platforms, and a coastal defense network built specifically to threaten passing tankers. Every night for 5 nights running, strike packages returned to variations of that same target set, according to CENTCOM's own release schedule, which is exactly the kind of repetition you see when a campaign is deliberately degrading a capability rather than just striking once for effect. Then, this morning, July 15th, CENTCOM confirmed the largest single strike of the campaign, so far a 90-minute operation, precisely targeting the cruise missile depot and launch infrastructure on Greater Tumb, described by CENTCOM as the most precise strike of the entire campaign to date. And layered on top of all of that, President Trump publicly warned that if Iran doesn't come to the table next week, the next targets on the list are power plants and bridges, core infrastructure, not military hardware, while U.S. intelligence continues monitoring a separate site known as Pickaxe Mountain for any sign it needs to be added to that list. So that's 8 days condensed. 1 attack on a tanker, a rapid air response, a naval blockade posture, 5 nights of strikes on a single island, and now a direct ultimatum sitting on the table. And here's the part that's easy to miss if you're only watching the headlines. This wasn't a single decision made this week. According to defense officials speaking on background, the target list for Greater Tumb was drawn up well before July 7th, which means the campaign we're watching unfold right now was already planned. The tanker attack simply gave Washington the trigger to execute it. Now, with that timeline in mind, let's actually look at the hardware that made 90 minutes of precision strikes possible. All right, let's talk hardware, because this is where the campaign actually gets interesting. The strike package that hit Greater Tumb wasn't one type of aircraft doing one job. It was a layered package, and layered strikes are basically the industry standard for anything defended by real air defenses. Phase 1 belongs to the F-16 CJ. known in the community as the wild weasel. And if you've never heard that term, today's term of the day is SEAD, suppression of enemy air defense. Basically, before anyone else gets to fly into contested airspace, somebody has to go in first and take out the radars and missile batteries that would otherwise shoot everybody else down. The F-16 CJ does that job with the AGM. 8-8 harm, a missile that literally homes in on an enemy radar's own signal. The radar operator turns the system on to find the incoming jet, and that same signal is what guides the missile straight into the dish. Think of it like a boxer who keeps his hands up and gets punished for it the moment the enemy radar lights up to look for the threat. It becomes the threat, guiding a missile home. That's phase one. Kick the door in, take out the alarm system, clear the air. Phase two belongs to the F-15E Strike Eagle. And full disclosure, I've spent time around this exact airframe, and there's a reason it's still the workhorse of choice for missions like this one, decades after it first flew. We're talking a jet that can push past Mach 2, hauling up to 8,000 pounds of ordnance on a single sortie, including bunker buster munitions in the 5,000-pound class, heavy enough to punch through reinforced concrete before detonating on the inside, which is exactly what you want against a hardened missile depot or an underground bunker. That's the aircraft that went after the cruise missile stockpile and the launch infrastructure on Greater Tum. And that's also the aircraft Trump specifically referenced when he talked about hitting power plants and bridges next, because the F-15E can carry the payload to do exactly that. Supporting both phases, you've got the EA-18G Growler, an electronic warfare aircraft whose entire job is jamming, flooding enemy radar and communications with noise. So the strike package becomes harder to detect and harder to target, sort of like trying to have a phone conversation in a room where someone's blasting static through the speakers the whole time. And up above the whole formation, you've got the E-2 Hawkeye, flying radar and battle management, essentially the quarterback in the sky, watching everything unfold and calling out threats before anyone on the ground even knows they've been spotted. On the other side of the ledger, Iran's primary anti-ship punch has historically come from the Noor missile, a licensed copy of the Chinese C-802, which is still a real threat to shipping even after 5 nights of strikes. That capability hasn't been fully erased, and I'll get into exactly why that matters in a minute. But put the whole package together, wild weasels clearing the radar picture, strike eagles delivering the heavy payload, growlers jamming the airwaves, and a Hawkeye directing traffic from above, and what you're looking at is a textbook integrated strike package executed against a fixed known target, which is exactly why CENTCOM was able to call this the most precise operation of the campaign so far. And here's the thing about all of this. None of this hardware is new. The F-15E first flew back in the 1980s. The concept of SEAD goes back to Vietnam. What's actually impressive isn't the technology, it's the choreography. Getting 4 or 5 different aircraft types from different bases, flying different profiles, to converge on one island in one 90-minute window without a single loss. That's not luck. That's decades of joint force integration finally paying off in real time. Now, impressive as that sounds, I need to be honest with you about what this campaign hasn't accomplished yet, because that's just as important as what it has. So let's be honest for a second, because I'm not here to sell you a story where one side has already won. 5 nights of strikes have hit a lot of fixed infrastructure. The depot on Greater Tum, launch platforms, coastal defense positions. But fixed infrastructure isn't the only thing IRGC has. Their fast boats are still out there, mobile, hard to track, and cheap to replace, which is exactly why they're still a threat to shipping even after everything we just talked about. Their coastal missile batteries, including variants of that Noor anti-ship missile, can be relocated in hours. Hidden under camouflage netting, move between strikes. You can't bomb what you can't find, and Iran knows that, which is exactly why their playbook now is shifting toward exactly that. Dispersed assets, proxy attacks, deniable operations, rather than standing and fighting a symmetric air campaign they clearly can't win. So no, IRGC hasn't been neutralized. Not even close. What has happened is that Admiral Brad Cooper, on the record, laid out the legal and political case for why this campaign continues, publicly stating that Iran deliberately targeted civilian shipping, citing those 7 ships hit in 7 days, and nearly 12 sailors killed, wounded, or missing as evidence of intent, not accident. That's not a small claim. That's the foundation for continued military action, framed specifically around protecting civilian mariners rather than escalating a war. And look, I understand why some of you are going to hear that and think, that's convenient timing. Maybe it is. But convenient timing doesn't automatically make a claim false. And right now, the evidence, the tanker attacks, the timeline, the casualty numbers lines up with what CENTCOM is describing. So where does that leave us? Iran still has capability. The US still has the legal framing to keep going, and neither side right now has an incentive to stop, which is exactly the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to say out loud on either side of this conflict. Escalation right now benefits both governments politically, even as it costs real sailors their lives. And that tension between political incentive and human cost is exactly where we need to zoom out. So zoom out with me for a second, because it's easy to get lost in strike counts and forget the shape of the whole thing. 90 minutes turned into 5 nights. 5 nights turned into a naval blockade posture with 20 destroyers and 2 carrier strike groups sitting in the Gulf. And now we've got a direct ultimatum on the table. Negotiate, or the next targets are power plants and bridges, the actual infrastructure that keeps a country running, not just its military hardware. That's a serious escalation ladder, and we're already several rungs up it. So here's the question I keep coming back to. Is this actually the final pressure campaign before Iran sits down at a table somewhere, Oman, Qatar, wherever the back channel happens to be this year? Or is this just the opening chapter of something that runs for months, the way these things sometimes do once both sides commit to a position publicly? And if Hormuz actually tightens, if this blockade posture becomes a real choke point rather than a show of force, who pays for that first? Is it Iran watching its own oil exports get strangled? Or is it every single one of us watching gas prices climb before anyone in Washington or Tehran even finishes their next press conference? I don't have clean answers to any of that tonight. And honestly, I don't think anyone does yet. Not CENTCOM, not the analysts, not Tehran either. What I do know is that campaigns like this one rarely end as cleanly as they start, and the next 7 days are going to tell us a lot more than the last 7 did. Because right now, everyone's watching the strikes. Nobody's watching what happens after. And that's usually where the real story ends up hiding. Not in the footage of the explosion, but in whatever decision gets made quietly days later, once the cameras have already moved on to the next headline. So keep an eye on the diplomacy channel just as closely as you keep an eye on the strike footage, because that's usually the part nobody bothers filming. All right, that's where I'm leaving it tonight, but I want to hear from you. Here's my question. Does Iran actually walk to the table this time, or does Washington end up hitting power plants and bridges before anyone signs anything? Drop your prediction in the comments, and if you think I'm wrong about the timeline, tell me exactly where, because that's honestly half the fun of doing this channel. Before you go, make sure you're following daily headlines everywhere. The socials are linked below, and that's where I post updates the moment something breaks, way before I have time to script a full video around it. And don't forget, we've still got that story out of the Sea of Azov, over 100 Russian vessels hit in 10 days. So if today wasn't dramatic enough for you, that one's coming soon, and it might honestly be the bigger story. Stay safe out there, keep asking questions, and I'll see you in the next one. This is Max, signing off from Daily Headlines.